This is Back to Back.
Yo, what's up, back-to-backers? This is Willie Joy. Welcome to the show. This is Back to Back. This is my podcast. How you doing? How you feeling? Are we living out there? Are we feeling good? I'm feeling a little loopy. I am fresh off a plane. I just landed back home about an hour ago. About to run out of the house again, but I just had to stop and chat with all of my best friends. That means you. Yeah, you're my best friend now. And look, I've got Chime on the show today. Straight out of the UK, I caught up with him as he was finishing up his second US tour of this year. And he's been on a great run in 2019, playing at Bass Canyon, playing over at Lost Lands, doing a crazy back-to-back with Excision out there. He's been putting out music on labels like Disciple, Circus, so many more, not to mention his own Rushdown label. And we actually talk a lot about running his own label, why he started it. He really struck me as a man on a mission, and he's pushing his own sound. He calls it color bass. It was great to talk to him, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. Back to Back is brought to you today by Serato, and every time I bring them up, I get a little smile on my face. I've been using Serato's products for so long. They've been really integral to my career, and it's just a cool full circle moment for me that I get to just share some new products of theirs with you now. And look, if you're a regular listener of this show, you already know Serato just released the new Serato Studio, which is a beat-making tool for all my producers out there. Serato Studio is here for you, here to help simplify the path to music production. It's that great kind of software that you can just sit down, it's quick, it's intuitive, you don't have to spend a ton of time figuring out how to do everything. But if you are a more advanced producer, you can go really deep on it. The functionality is just awesome. It comes built in with tons of loops, effects, samples. They also release a lot of artist sample packs. They've got packs from people like Flostradamus, Just Blaze, and so many more. And right now, there's a free 14-day trial waiting for you over at Serato's website. So go to www.serato.com/studio to grab your 14-day free trial right now. Go get it, sit down. You're going to be making music in minutes. There's no downside. So go check them out right now, Serato Studio at www.serato.com/studio. So, for today's episode with Chime, I met up with him a couple weeks ago out in Los Angeles when I was out there doing my marathon week in Southern California. And this was actually kind of fun because he and I actually recorded this over at Flostradamus's house. We lost the venue I had planned to record this. Kurt Flostradamus stepped in. Big shout out to Floss for giving us a home. So yeah, we were sitting in his beautiful house, recording this on a very sunny, very pleasant afternoon. And Chime and I had never met before. We had been talking online about doing this. We had a very narrow window. We only intersected in LA for a couple days, so we just had to make it happen. And look, I've been following his music for a while. It's just something a little different, and there's no one who sounds quite like him. And in this conversation, I think you'll find pretty quickly, like I said, he's a guy on a mission. He's really putting on for melodic dubstep, for this style he calls color bass. He started his own label that is really dedicated to finding these artists, helping them in their careers, pushing their sounds. And he was just a really sweet guy. We talked right before he headed off to Lost Lands, where I know he had a big set, I think a couple sets out there. So this is great timing to go a little deeper with him, get to know what he's all about. And you got to go check out the music. The whole label, actually. He sent me a promo pack of a bunch of different artists from the label. I've been playing a lot of it on Back to Back Radio. That's my show on Sirius XM. If you've got Sirius, you might want to tune into that. That's my hour-long mix show every single week, Channel 52. every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, or you can catch the replay Friday mornings. That's drive time, 7 a.m. Pacific or 10 Eastern. No worries if you don't have Sirius, though, because you can always connect with me directly right here on the podcast. The community for this show is really what keeps me going. So don't forget, backtobackpod@gmail.com is my email address, or you can always hit me up at Willie Joy or at backtobackpod. And if you want to support this show, if you like what I'm doing, if you want to hear more of it, this is also the best way that you can help us grow. It's just by spreading the word. Beyond any monetary donations, beyond any advertisements, it's really your support that means the most to me and really is the most valuable to the show. So give us a shout out, tag us in your stories, let people know you're listening. Throw up a tweet, let your friends know what we're doing over here. And anytime I see people doing that, anytime I'm getting tagged, I'm always going to be replying, retweeting, and just generally connecting with everybody out there. It's a lot of fun. So hit us up, let people know you're listening, support the show, hit me up with any of your questions, concerns, and let's get into today's episode. A true sweetheart, a man on a quest, and an extremely talented musician. This is me and Chime, back to back. Let's go. It's interesting coming to talk. I mean, obviously, we had never met until right now, which is always fun. But I try to research people before I come talk to them. Well, you were actually kind of hard to research.
Really?
I mean, there's some interviews, there's a little bio, but not as much information as I'm used to.
Okay, all right.
So I get to learn a little bit, which is always cool.
I do
for
kind
me.
of a lot of posts, kind of to deeper, like meaningful posts to my kind of Facebook group at Chimed In. So, and that's kind of locked off from the public, kind of. I mean, I accept all the requests to it.
Right. The group and those posts you make, is that sort of more of a personal, like, your fans get to know you through that?
What's
I going through your head?
Yeah, I kind of post more personal stuff on there, and also my ideas behind like concepts of my tracks and stuff. Because I know they will find it more interesting in general because they're enough of a fan to be in the fan group.
Yeah, they signed up for it.
Yeah. Whereas everyone else, Well,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always different levels you can engage with an artist, right? Yeah. Like you could just, think somebody has a catchy song and then never think about them again. Or you could, hear somebody's song and want to know everything about their life.
Yeah.
And all of those people exist. I think probably you and I both have met.
Yeah. I was going to say, like,
levels.
I'll make a post like going, "Oh, I'm not feeling too well," or whatever. Like, ask me questions, and then like I'll meet someone and they'll go, "You feeling better?" And I'm like, "Oh, what? Oh, you're referring to the post? Okay, all right. Yeah, I suppose."
yeah. And that's funny too, that people kind of get this sense of who you are. Like, I think about this a lot, where us that we show publicly, like as an artist, or even if you're not an artist, but just, the way people portray themselves on social media, it's sort of like it is one side of you, but then it's also not you in total. But there's people who only see the social media stuff and then they think they just know exactly who you are.
Yeah. So what I try and do, I try and be myself as much as possible. But really what I'm posting is only the positive side. So I am trying to be me, but the excited about music me on all kind of social media and stuff, or excited about, oh, this hotel's a lot bigger than I was expecting.
That's interesting.
I posted a video recently just being like, okay, this promoter accidentally got me like a castle. I was like, check out all these features. So,
well, yeah, and I mean, that's definitely social media worthy, but why don't you post the negative stuff?
Why don't I don't like to be negative in general.
Is
Sometimes
it that you don't want to be like a complainer? Because I can relate to that.
Yeah, I just think you can do a lot more with being positive on social media, I think. And I don't want to close any doors, The occasional, I'm not so happy about the dubstep scene tweet gets out.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, so for the most part, I feel like my job is to uplift people rather than bring them down, you know? And yeah, if I'm being negative on social media or I'm complaining about stuff, it just goes against what I think I should be doing.
And I totally relate to sort of not wanting to just put bad vibes out there, for lack of a better term. And, you know, there's enough bad vibes on the internet already, for sure.
Exactly, yeah.
And the internet already makes me anxious and bummed out a lot of the times when I look at it. But, you know, for you, I guess I'm just curious, like personally, like say you're, you know, having a down day or something, would you just not post at all and kind of handle it on your own?
See, because I kind of stockpile things I'm going to post about, because I try and post like every day, especially while on tour, because there's usually stuff to post.
Right.
You know, I have like a backlog of kind of good shots I got like from photographers and videographers and stuff that I can put with captions, or I can ask a question or something. So I usually have one of those just ready to go, even though I'm feeling shit.
Right.
But the other thing I'll do in general, like recently, I just did like an impromptu like Q&A thing. I was like, feeling shit, ask me questions, and usually, you know, that keeps me busy.
Yeah, true.
And it keeps my mind kind of focused on stuff, and it feels like it's still going towards work, because you know, I'm interacting with fans. That's part of the job.
And I will say it's heartening, you know, for as much shit as I just talked about the internet, it is heartening that usually when somebody makes a post like that, like, yeah, I'm not feeling so great today or something, you do generally see a lot of, you know, people coming out to support or just say, hope you have a better day tomorrow, all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
every once in a
totally.
while, that does give me more faith in humanity.
I'm always very pleasantly surprised by my fan base. I'm very proud that my music has kind of attracted those kind of people that are generally positive.
And I think your whole movement, it's very unique. It's something I want to dig into, because it does seem sort of separate from what's going on with the larger dubstep scene in general right now. Not necessarily separate, but, you know, it's like a different offshoot that seems very much unique and identifiable.
That's good.
and it almost does, in my mind, it almost does have a different attitude to it, which is interesting to hear you sort of say, you know, that it's about positivity for you and about uplifting people and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which I think if you listen to your music, you know, there's plenty of those ideas in there as well. Is that like a conscious thing for you while you're writing music?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just fits in with the kind of music I already want to make, really. I mean, that's kind of why I chose a name like Chime over something like Kill the Noise or Zomboy, you know. Right. You know, those are great names for them.
Yeah.
But I wanted to stray away from like the death and the dark and the skulls. So that's why I chose something that sounded bright and colorful and different from a lot of dubstep, which, I mean, it's very popular right now to be kind of like almost like satanic and scary and skulls and death.
Right.
And that has always worked brilliantly with dubstep, but I wanted to make sure I was in a different kind of region.
How did that evolve for you? Because I have to imagine, you know, when you first started making music, probably that concept wasn't as fully formed as it is now. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely developed over time. I mean, I originally started making like drum and bass, but really what originally got me into making music was The Prodigy, which is incredibly aggressive and, you know, has all that kind of scary branding and everything. So originally, me and my cousin made an alias called Caution and Crisis. That's a great drum and bass name, by the way.
Well, because it sounds like Jason Status.
Well, yeah.
We were like, let's pick 2 words for each of us. Yeah. And he was like a little bit more crazy than me, so he was Crisis.
And you were Caution. That's hilarious.
Yeah, so we started making drum and bass like that, and our branding was originally going to be like, you know, yellow and black, like police don't cross tape and stuff, and that sort of, it's supposed to be
like the whole concept,
but then we started liking kind of more melodic, almost like poppy drum and bass kind of tunes like Cameron Crooked and DJ Fresh and that sort of thing. So that's what we ended up making. And then as I kind of offshot, that's not a word, offshooted.
Also not a word, but
also
I know what you mean.
Into my own project and stuff, I started liking the kind of prettier stuff a lot more. And I decided I wanted that to be part of the brand because that's immediately going to set me apart from other people, I felt.
It's interesting that, you were thinking about that at the start of these projects, right? Like even the early drum and bass one, you were saying you have the yellow and black caution tape and all that.
Yeah.
Is that just the way your mind works in general? Like, do you conceptualize things before you really jump into them? Because even to take it a little further, like with your record label and all of that, like it's very well put together, but then also it seems like you started that very early on into your career. Whereas, a different artist might have waited years to start their own label.
Well, that was partially me not knowing what I was doing, really, or getting myself into it.
Sure.
Because originally it's Rushdown as my label, and me and my manager decided, let's make a kind of label imprint where we could put out our own stuff, just to control it and stuff. And so anything that doesn't go to a bigger label, we could put there. And then I was like, why don't I invite like 20 of my artist friends to release on it? And then I realized it was quite a lot of work. But then I think about a year into it, I decided I could use this to kind of promote upcoming melodic dubstep artists, or color bass, as I've decided to kind of call the genre I make, which is kind of in between. You've got Excision on one side, you've got Illenium 7 lines on the other side.
Sure.
Bang in the middle, really.
Right.
Because melodic dubstep, people immediately think, okay, 7 lines and Illenium.
Yeah.
Whereas, there's so much more in between that is still melodic. So
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing because you have sort of managed to balance out the melody and the prettiness of the more melodic stuff, for lack of a better word, with the aggression of, the really heavy skulls and death stuff.
Yeah. I can't really have one without the other because, if it's a fully heavy tune, I'm like, I need some melody. If it's a fully like melodic tune, I'm like, I need some basses, I need some grit. So that's why everything I make kind of sits in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, I think it's a very unique lane. I mean, that's initially what drew me to you and your sound, is I just hadn't really heard anything like it.
Cool, yeah.
And then when we first connected, you sent me a bunch of stuff from the label, and a lot of it was kind of also in that vein of,
Yeah, well, I'm very happy, because there really isn't a place for people making that kind of music.
Well, so when you started the label, did you quickly find that there were a bunch of similarly minded people who are kind of just looking for an outlet, or who didn't have a way to be heard?
Yeah, I guess. I just felt like, the kind of labels that are releasing melodic dubstep like mine they feel very unattainable to somebody just starting off, because like Monster Cat releases a bunch of melodic stuff, No Copyright Sounds, and like Disciple as well, and maybe a few others, but those are all kind of, they feel like way too high up on the ladder.
Sure. When you're just starting, it's like, how do you even reach a label of that size?
Yeah. So I decided, okay, my label is going to be kind of that stepping stone, at least. And if I can help cultivate music similar to mine, that's great.
That's awesome, man. Have you, I know it's still kind of like early days in the large scheme of things, but have you had some success stories with the label, with like artists, kind of being able to raise their profile, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I'm always trying my best to kind of bring everybody up with me that I feel like, deserves more attention. Definitely like a golden moment for me was finding Ace Aura, who I think is, I really hope is going to change the game in terms of, he's making melodic rhythm.
Right.
Like those are two words that should not go together, right?
Yeah, no, his tunes are wild.
And and he won my remix competition, and then we released a bunch of his stuff on my label, and he's just continued to develop from there, and it's been like, wow, this is really new for 2019 melodic stuff.
Yeah.
Because mostly what I do, I try and innovate in bits and pieces, but really I'm drawing from older styles of dubstep and trying to keep them alive. Whereas he really is kind of pushing things forward for melodic stuff, and there's nobody doing that, I feel like.
Right.
So yeah, him and there's another guy, Reflect, who's about to change his as artist name and come out with like a big debut EP.
Okay.
Has been great. And I also brought Sekai along for a tune of my Disciple EP. So, I'm always kind of trying to look for ways I can help out these artists and make sure there's more of a general consensus of melodic stuff in the scene.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just fascinated by that mentality in someone who your own career is, you're still building it and you're still, it's not like a legacy act starting a new tent pole. Have you always been that way about making it about more than just you, like in terms of framing what you do as a movement, as part of something bigger?
Well, it's become more and more important for me. Originally I was just like, okay, let's get big. Let's see if I can make this a career.
Which is how everybody starts.
Well, exactly. And actually, like quite a driving force for that was Fox Stevenson. He's from Leeds, the same hometown as me.
I didn't know that.
And he was making drum and bass back when I was making drum and bass, and then he started making dubstep.
Did you know him back in the day?
We actually have some pictures from a show we played like 8 years ago in Leeds in this venue that is now closed. But those were decent shows. Like I've played smaller shows on tour in America.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but it always felt attainable for me because he was always like a few steps ahead and making similarly like melodic stuff. So I was like, oh, if he can do it, I can do it.
Well, and he's a great reference too. I didn't even realize he was also from Leeds, but he's another one where I look at what he's doing. I love his music. It's very unique. No one else really sounds like him. And he's kind of got his own movement going on. But maybe the difference is that, because you've got the label and this, stable of artists, for lack of a better word, it feels like more of a movement, whereas to him, I'm just like, he's great. He's off doing his own thing.
I like the idea of it being a movement, and I think we need it. And I sort of, as I was kind of gaining more of a following and then starting to play shows in the US and everything, I saw that hunger for the melodic side to return.
Well, that's an interesting thing too. I'm very curious about how your reception was when you started coming to the US, because right now the US dubstep scene is stereotyped as, being like the hardest, most aggressive shit. That's all we want every day. Did you find that there was sort of this minority crowd or just less spoken for crowd that was looking for something different? Yeah.
Originally, coming over to the US, I was just amazed to hear any bass music whatsoever. I was just like, this is the best thing ever. Because
when did you start coming over?
2017, end of 2017.
Okay, so just a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Because it's a drought in the UK. There's like 1 or 2 shows in London a year.
Yeah,
really. More if you get very lucky. And I try and get to every single one of those shows if I'm in the country to try and like keep that scene alive.
Which is so funny because that bass music dubstep comes from London, or the UK.
I think that really was its downfall, though.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, because dubstep started as one thing. It then evolved, and as soon as it was picked up by more of the American side, it changed.
Oh yeah,
and English. I guess
we're good at ruining stuff.
Well, that's the whole stereotype thing, right?
Yeah.
So British people love to moan about Americans taking our stuff and making it worse.
Oh yeah,
punk is one of those as well. Like,
oh yeah, no, we're good at it. That's like our thing.
But that was the point. I actually started liking dubstep a lot more because I was originally like drum and bass all the way,
right?
And there was kind of more of a sophistication to drum and bass over dubstep. Dubstep artists hadn't quite figured out how to mix down, or like sound design things decently. So when Skrillex popped up and everything kind of really developed very quickly, that's when I started liking it. But that's when it started really plummeting in popularity in the UK.
Well, now you've got me curious. Like, tell me about Leeds a little bit, because first of all, I'm pretty sure I don't know where Leeds is.
Okay.
But I want to know what growing up there was like and kind of what was going around you musically at the time.
Sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, so, well, first of all, Leeds is in the north, from the north. So everybody sounds like Jon Snow.
Is his accent accurate to the region?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that's why I say like Bath instead of Bath.
Oh, interesting.
That's kind of how I distinguish north and south.
Ah, that's so funny. I never would have even thought of that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, it's near Manchester. It's near like Sheffield. It's kind of like halfway up to Scotland from London. And it's kind of like, I mean, most of the kind of dubstep scene was down south, I feel like.
Bristol and...
Yeah, Bristol and London and that sort of thing. But we did occasionally get like dubstep shows up in Leeds. Like Skrillex came in 2012, which was like my golden era of Skrillex.
Were you going to see DJs play as a kid?
No, not really. So I wasn't really into music, or at least I thought I wasn't, until kind of 15.
Okay.
And then I saw there was a music video for The Prodigy Omen.
Yeah. Classic.
Because my sister would watch like music channels and things in the charts would pop on the TV all the time. So I was like, this is pretty sweet. And also like it was around that time I figured out that they also did like Smack My Bitch Up.
Yeah.
Which I think I have a video of me at the age of like 5 dancing to it. Because my dad absolutely loves that tune.
Oh, that's awesome.
And for me, that was kind of the original drop. Like that was the track that did the build up, stop, pre-drop vocal, everything goes mental.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. And I mean, historically, like it was a hit in its day too, you know? It was one of those tracks that was able to connect with a shitload of people and be more than kind of just like a little underground thing.
Yeah.
Like they really dialed in sort of how to make that kind of crazy sound connect with sort of your mainstream average listener.
Yeah, exactly. And it was so different from what I'd heard. I mean, the aggression of like Invaders Must Die, which was on the same album, it got radio play and people loved it. And it's like, you would never expect that now. Yeah,
well, and again, it's that UK punk energy is in that too.
Yeah.
So there's something, it makes sense to me that at least in the UK, sort of everyone would be stoked about it because it's, the Prodigy were just updating the same attitude of punk from, the 70s and 80s and mixing it with all the new styles. And yeah, it's interesting to think about contextualizing the music when it was actually happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I got really into the Prodigy, and I kind of like got all their albums and listened through all of them.
And you just weren't really into music much before that?
Well, I thought so, but as I started listening to more music and then starting to produce it, I realized that actually I loved music, but most of my experience with music was with video game music.
Oh, okay.
Because really, like, I always say that my brain kind of switched on at the age of like, I think 4 or 5 or something, when my brother handed me a Game Boy with Pokemon Yellow.
Okay.
And that's kind of where all my memories start from.
That's your mother and your father is Pokemon Yellow.
Yeah, so that game, like, it influenced me so much in musically and everything. So I
don't think I'm familiar with the music in that game.
Oh, it's legendary. It's like all the classic Pokemon tunes. I'm sure you'd actually recognize some.
Probably
just from
I would.
experiencing. Like, yeah. So I kind of, and then I was just playing video games. I was like, that was my favorite thing in the world for ages. So yeah, when I started making music, I was like, oh, this is where my ideas of melodies are coming from. This is where my chord sequences are coming from. And so as I started developing my music, I started going, okay, I'm just going to embrace this. I'm just going to be like, these chords remind me of this particular moment in a particular game. I'm just going to theme the whole track around it. So I've kind of become like the video game dubstep guy.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, I can definitely hear 8-bit influences in a lot of what you do and your melodies and that sort of thing. But again, you're not just sort of like you say you theme it that way, but to me it's still you're making something new out of it, you know? Because there's plenty of people who just make like game music or you know are influenced by games, and it kind of sounds like they're just trying to soundtrack a video game.
Yeah, you see, I don't want to do that. I want to kind of softly reference stuff and build a new kind of world around that.
Yeah, which I really like, man. And what did your parents do that they were listening to The Prodigy? And
so yeah, they were very into the punk era. Pretty sure I've seen pictures of them with like crazy hair and everything.
Mohawks.
Yeah, but my dad always had an interest in kind of electronic music, and every time, so he would play me like Kraftwerk, Pocket Calculator in the car, and I would request it every time we were in the car. I was like, can we have the Calculator song? Because it had like beeps and boops.
Right, yeah.
And it was very kind of novel.
Well, that's one thing people don't talk about when they talk about how legendary Kraftwerk is that it really crossed generations, you know, like kids, kids could like it, old people could like it. And it's that kind of timeless quality that I feel like doesn't get appreciated enough. Because, of course, they went on to influence the sound of production for decades to come. But it's also the accessibility of it, right?
Yeah.
That, like, you as a 5-year-old could hear it and love it.
Yeah, I mean, even back then, I remember loving the concept behind that tune.
Right.
If you haven't heard it, it's basically like, I am the operator with my pocket calculator. And then he presses various buttons on the calculator and they make different noises for each button. And I could already visualize that so clearly as a kid. Yeah. I was like, I really like this.
Yeah. I think that's great, man. I even, for as much as people like to talk about artists like Marshmello and current people doing that, like he's connecting with children as much as he's connecting with, you know, adult dubstep fans.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that's amazing. Whatever else, you know, some people don't like the music, some people get annoyed because it's this like super branded out thing. But to me, I'm like, no, man, it's what he's done is figured out how to sort of exist across generations.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before, but there really hasn't been like an electronic dance music artist that has appealed to kids before.
I think that's dope, man, because then that's a whole, you know, and those kids, if they heard Marshmello when they were 8 years old, who knows what they'll go on to do when they're 21.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe they won't do anything with it, but it is a cool idea to me because I always like bringing in more people. I think this is true for kind of any music scene, but it can get so cliquey and so unwelcoming to outsiders.
Oh, yeah.
And I really like trying to bring in new people.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's interesting about my fan base, really. I get a lot of people coming up to me and going, I really wasn't into dubstep, but somebody showed me your stuff and it was interesting. That's really cool because, you know, with dubstep being so aggressive right now, that does shut out a lot of people. Anyone who really cares about musicality, they're not going to be interested in like what's really big right now.
Well, and there's, you know, with the super heavy metal dubstep, which I want to be clear, I'm not talking shit about. I like a lot of that, but you know, it's this very like macho, aggressive energy, and
almost very male centric.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Which I guess is where bro step came from as a term.
Yeah, as the stereotype term. Yeah. Absolutely. I think if you look at artists that we tend to think of as sort of pushing things forward always, like take a guy like Diplo or something, you know, he's now on this house tip. And I think a big part of that, I mean, he said as much in interviews and to me is, you know, he wanted more like female energy and like wanted to put that out there.
I think it's really important because the more ratio of guys to girls in the audience, the less safe I almost feel like girls will be.
Oh, of course.
Will feel in that audience.
Guaranteed.
And I want to make sure, you know, everyone's welcome.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, man. I mean,
I don't want anyone to be really put off by even just the style of music.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think about, to draw another maybe sketchy historical parallel, is the nu metal movement in the late 90s.
All right, yeah.
And all kind of culminated in Woodstock 99, which was, this big festival where like all the bands, Limp Bizkit and Korn and Rage Against the Machine, all these bands, The Offspring, a million different bands played there. And it was at the height of nu metal, right? So like same as dubstep is right now, like super aggressive, just like rage, energy. Mm-hmm. And the legacy of Woodstock 99 for a lot of people is that there was a lot of violence. There, people started fires. They were tearing it apart.
Right, yeah.
Women got sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
Like it was a bad look for something that should have been like the celebration of the height of this scene.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, I would say,
and I'm not saying that's what's happening to dubstep, not at all. But
I wouldn't necessarily correlate more aggressive music with that kind of thing, but.
No,
there
and I
is
wouldn't
something
either.
to be said. I mean,
yeah. I think it's more about, it's not about the music. You're right. I mean, because I've always loved aggressive music since I was a little kid, and like angry music and heavy music. I love all of it.
I find most people who are into that are like the loveliest people.
Very chill. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's more about, I think, as a scene gets bigger and maybe more people come in who don't know the roots of it or don't know the whole story, the whole narrative. Right? It can kind of turn into something else.
Well, speaking of not knowing the whole story, that's kind of something I've been doing recently is, because there's a lot of new fans that have only come into dubstep in like the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's kind of more accessible than ever. I mean, the headbanger movement is by its very nature accessible. Because as soon as somebody explained to me, oh, you could just bring someone to the show and they go, what do? I don't know. I'm scared.
Right.
And you just tell them, okay, just fold your body in half over and over again.
Yeah.
They're going to go, oh yeah, this is fun. I can understand this.
Yep.
And then the music kind of, the kind of dubstep we have right now is very kind of simplistic on those quarter note beats.
Right.
To facilitate that. That's kind of the state we're in with a lot of the crowds I'm playing to. So, introducing older eras of dubstep to 2019 is completely fresh to them. I'll make like a wobbly kind of UK dubstep tune and they've never heard anything like it before because they just weren't around during that period, So I really like including as many different eras of dubstep in my sets and in my own music as possible because it feels really fresh, even though it's distinctly not fresh. It's old.
Well, of course, but I mean, every genre of music is recycling something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we were just talking about how the Prodigy was recycling punk music.
Yeah. But with something new.
Right, exactly.
That's the whole thing,
Yeah, because if you're just making something that sounds like a dubstep song from 2008, that probably won't go over well. But if you sort of just take the ideas they were using and recontextualize it.
Well, that's the interesting thing. Even just updating the mix down to a 2019 level of quality is exciting.
Yeah.
Because there's so many old tunes I would love to play out, but they're just like really rough sounding.
Dude, I've talked about this on this show before. I wish I could take like 10 of my favorite artists and just force them to remake all of their classic tunes.
Yeah, sometimes I do it myself. I'm like, I'm just going to replace like the kick and snare.
Right. Sometimes that's all it takes. Yeah.
But I really love those old ideas and I love bringing them back because they feel new to new people.
I agree. And it's nice to sort of be able to make those references without feeling like you're going backwards.
Yes. Yeah. I still want it to feel like new for 2019 still.
Right.
But with throwback elements.
And so as you were getting into electronic music back, when you were 15, 16 in Leeds, how did that evolve for you? Did you jump into production right away?
Well, I think, I started listening to music first.
Just in general.
Which I needed to really catch up on because I wasn't listening to anything.
There had been a few years of music before that.
It's been a couple. So really it was The Prodigy. And then I'd heard that Pendulum were similar. They're not really similar, but
yeah.
So I kind of got into Pendulum, and they had like full albums to listen to, which I
Right.
really liked.
I mean, one similarity is they make songs the same way Prodigy makes songs.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
They had a similar impactful energy that I couldn't find in any kind of more regular listening
Right.
to music. So yeah, from there I kind of I was on Spotify, I think, and I was just going on all the similar artists, and I found like Subfocus, and then all the Hospital Records artists, and then that just really led on to drum and bass from there.
And did you immediately want to be involved, make it yourself?
Well, originally, I think when I actually started making music, I didn't try and really replicate what like the artists I was listening to were doing. I literally just opened GarageBand.
Yeah.
I got a new laptop and I was like, oh, let's try all the applications because I was very excited. And I was like, oh, I could. Then immediately I was like opening iMovie, and then I was making like stupid videos with my cousin and stuff. And then that same cousin, we started making music together as Caution and Crisis later on.
Right.
But yeah, and then I was like, oh, I could start making my own music. And I started just throwing loops together in GarageBand.
Were you looking at it more almost from a gamer perspective at that point? Just like, this is something fun to play around with?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was an early PS2 game called Music 2000 that I remember my brother messing around with, which was basically just putting loops together and making music.
Right.
And I always thought that was just a game.
Right.
So when I opened GarageBand, I was like, oh, this is fun. I can, it was like a video game experience.
Yeah, you could relate to it. I mean, even now, I don't know what you use. Like when I'm in Ableton, it does feel like a game sometimes.
Oh, totally.
You know?
Yeah, you've got the same
putting a puzzle together.
Yeah, it's a puzzle game.
Yeah.
And you got the same payoff and everything. It just connects with my brain the same way.
Yeah, I agree. Did you start off, just you and your friend, like kind of having fun with it?
Oh yeah, we made absolutely terrible, ridiculous music. Most of the time, actually, we had a terrible microphone and we didn't know how to make any sounds other than like the Apple loops we had.
Right.
So we would just do all the sounds ourselves.
I like
with
that.
our mouths.
Yeah.
So we just beatbox stuff, and I was like, I need a riser here. I knew what a riser was,
Right.
but I didn't know how the hell you make one. So I was just like, like into the microphone, put some stupid effects on it.
Well, and even today, man, you could still do that. You process it enough.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm like, I totally want to do a full beatbox track, and
People
I have
make
started
like
using
viral videos with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So that's what I did, and then I kind of gradually figured out how to use synths and stuff. But I was really starting from zero. I had no musical knowledge
and kind of no one's showing you how to do it.
No idea whatsoever. I didn't know what I was getting into, really.
Was there anything going on locally that was influencing you at the time other than games?
No, I mean, I didn't really go out much at that age, really. Yeah, I was mostly just coming home and like either, doing music stuff or making stupid films or...
And is that how you were connecting with people your own age at the time too? Like online and through media?
I mean, I wasn't really connecting with anyone online at that point.
Okay.
I mean, I was on like MySpace and stuff, but I wasn't like sharing any of my own music.
Sure.
At that point.
Well, I didn't even mean that. I just meant in a social sense.
Oh, okay. I wanted to I like doing creative projects. So like, I started getting into trampolining. Like majorly.
Like jumping on a trampoline?
Yeah, like just doing like tricks and stuff and learning every single thing I could.
Okay. Wait, tell me about this because I'm not like, I mean, I know what a trampoline is and I've seen people like do a flip, but like I'm unaware of this scene.
Well, it wasn't really a scene. It was, I had a trampoline in the garden.
Okay.
And
it was your scene.
And I would just go on that like pretty much every day and just learn tricks and it was just fun. It was creative.
Right.
I was always just like into anything creative. And so I ended up making like me and some other people who could do some kind of trampoline tricks.
Yeah.
We entered like some school, talent competition.
Yeah.
And we were like, we're going to do trampolining and parkour and stuff. And so I ended up making like a video compilation of like all of our tricks and stuff and put some pendulum music
There
to
you
it.
go,
And so I loved everything like that. And that's kind of, I was always looking for those kind of creative projects.
Was that
long before it was music?
Yeah. Was that one of the first times you sort of put something that you made online?
Yeah, it was all just like
digest.
sketch videos and just terrible videos
Right.
of me and my cousin just messing around.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think that's maybe a newer paradigm is sort of people have already been posting stuff online about themselves or about what they're doing just sort of as part of growing up.
Yeah,
now, right?
yeah.
And then when it gets to the point when you start to do it professionally, be it through your music or something else, do you think like your familiarity just with those systems and that way of interacting with people gave you a little jump start, like helped you sort of conceptualize what
Yeah.
you wanted the music project to be?
Yeah, well, I always really liked kind of showing off what I'd made, you know?
As you should, yeah.
Yeah, so I was just like, I started posting things, and then as I was making music, I was excited to upload it to like SoundCloud and YouTube and see what people thought. And really, our first following came from sort of, I did a series of DJ tutorials, actually. When I started, I got my decks and I started figuring stuff out.
Yeah.
And I noticed that nobody had done any like dubstep DJ like beginner tutorials. So
Like
now
how to play a dubstep set kind of thing?
Yeah, or like, how to specifically mix for dubstep.
Sure.
And so I made one of those and put it on YouTube on our channel. And I think it's almost at 1 million views now.
Nice.
Like back from like 8 years ago.
yeah.
And it doesn't work anymore because I didn't speak in it. I just did like those old YouTube annotations to
Sure.
explain everything I was doing, and they've been removed now.
Oh, no.
So the video is complete. It's just me doing a mix with no explanation.
Amazing.
But that was kind of the first initial thing where we're like, ooh, people are starting to pay attention. And then from that, people started listening to our music as well.
And were you playing out live at the time locally?
We were very excited about the prospect of doing that.
Yeah.
We played at the Cockpit in Leeds in this tiny room, and only our friends came. And for some reason, we expected loads of people to turn up
Of course. Yeah.
because we had no idea.
How promotion works.
Yeah, I think there's still a video of that somewhere online. Yeah, we played bits and pieces, but really, like our main excitement thing, there was a group of friends. So there was us, and there was a guy called Ben who went by Tokyo, and 2 guys called Box Smash that were like dubstep with drums,
Okay.
with a drum kit.
Yeah.
And then there was Stan SB at the time that was Fox Stevenson.
Oh, okay.
And I kind of got into this group a little bit, and we started playing shows at this venue called Joseph's Well that I said is like doesn't exist
Right.
anymore, I'm pretty sure. And they would bring a lot of their friends because it was kind of the height of the drum and bass and dubstep kind of
Convergence.
being mainstream in the
Yeah.
UK, because that's what a lot of Americans don't necessarily understand is that like it was in the charts. Like Flux Pavilion was in the charts with
Right.
Bass Cannon.
Right. No, exactly. And I mean, the UK has always been better than the US in terms of radio, I think, and in terms of like cultural support of homegrown sounds.
Yeah, I mean, Radio 1 was like, it was a big deal.
Yeah. But it's crazy, like if you think about, a song like Flux Pavilion Bass Cannon being on, pop radio here or something. It's just, that would never happen. Not in any universe,
it was crazy. Like, it was very exciting because it meant, it definitely felt like, there was places to go in what we were making and stuff. So yeah, like a load of people came to those shows, and that was just really exciting. Like we were still learning. We did an all original set. That's the first show I ever played.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so ambitious for like a young new group.
Yeah, but that's what we thought you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I was on the decks, and then my cousin James was like doing keyboard stuff, and it like went down surprisingly well, and that was very very rewarding because it was all our own music,
Right.
And we were like, wow, this is a thing we can do,
Right.
and that kind of kickstarted a lot of our excitement for working on music.
And then did you end up going to university?
Yeah, I did. I went to the University of Huddersfield,
Okay.
which is a shitty town.
Can't say I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's kind of like between. It's one of those places between places.
Yeah.
In the UK.
It's a place you would normally just drive straight through.
Yeah, or straight past on the motorway. Which I actually found out. So when I met up with Sean, Dr. P, at Rampage Open Air, we found out that we ended up in the same university on the same music tech course.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, just like a few years apart.
Oh, that's crazy because he was on this show and I think he even talked. I'm pretty sure we talked about that for him.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I got to go back and listen to that again.
Yeah. I think that's actually the first time I heard about this podcast. Well, somebody mentioned that Dr. P mentioned you on this podcast. I was like,
right.
And then I listened to it. Yeah, that's
dope, man.
the interesting side note there.
He was a great guy. That was the first time I had ever met him either.
Yeah,
was when
yeah.
he did this show. Really good dude.
Yeah, but that course, it wasn't really. It was terrible.
Yeah.
it wasn't geared up for actually making you learn how to produce music. It was a lot of kind of, we did a lot of like recording bands and that sort of thing. Yep. And there was a sound design module that was kind of more building synths in Reactor than actually doing anything creative.
I actually had a very similar experience in my university.
It seems to be a classic university thing.
It was just an old school music technology program,
Yeah, exactly.
Very
it was
old
called popular music production.
Okay.
So it sounded like we're going to be making pop music,
right?
Which is electronic nowadays.
Yeah, as we just mentioned, bass cannon on the charts.
Yeah, exactly. So so I had a lot of discouragement from that. That was really terrible. Like the whole time I was there, and like the lecturers.
Did you finish the course?
I did. Yeah. The lecturers were really kind of nasty about me going into electronic music.
Really?
They were like, "You're not going to get anywhere."
Damn.
Other people on the course were also kind of like that. So I felt like I was completely alone in that. There was maybe one other guy who made kind of like electro house stuff. And immediately I was like, oh, dude, we've got to hang out because you're the only other person.
Yeah,
I went to university thinking there'd be loads of other upcoming producers.
You'd find your community, yeah. So were you making music as Chime during that time?
No. So I was... after Caution and Crisis, I started making music under my own name as December.
Okay.
With a 3. Mm-hmm. And I mean, already that's a very confusing name.
Yeah.
Because there's 3 E's in December.
And which one is the 3?
And it was the second E that was replaced with a 3. Because I wanted to show up on Google, but it was terrible.
But yeah, in order for that to happen, someone has to know how to type it. And,
exactly. Yeah. Very flawed name.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, that's when I started making kind of my own stuff, and I kind of started going more into the more kind of colorful, flowery, fairy princess kind of music.
Yeah. The beautiful fairy princess that you are.
Yeah. So, and then, I think the first kind of bit of following I got was through like EDM.com and dubstep.net. Because they started doing like just putting out people's tracks, and there was a huge audience there ready to kind of consume all this music. So that's kind of where I got a lot of my initial following.
Did you realize at the time that what you were making, you're getting more into this colorful sound? Did you realize at the time that was a little different from what was happening? Or was it more just that you were kind of just making what you thought sounded cool and not paying as much attention to the context?
Well, actually, at that time, dubstep was more like that.
Well, that's true. That's very true.
You listen to those initial Skrillex tunes, and there's so much melody and feeling and color.
Absolutely. No, you're right.
So I just thought I'm doing the same kind of thing as those guys. And then as everything just started getting darker and darker and darker, I just stayed the same.
Right.
And suddenly I stand out more for doing the same thing that I've been doing for years.
Sure, of course. Well, and I mean, I would say it's not the same necessarily, because I think your sound has evolved too, to the point where now it's almost its own it's not its own genre, but it's almost its own scene or its own style. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
No, 100%, man. I guess now we're getting into what we mentioned earlier, which is sort of your relationship to the dubstep scene at large.
Yes.
And, how you see yourself fitting into it, how you can get frustrated with sort of the single-mindedness of a large part of the scene. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah. Frustration is definitely it, and just kind of disappointment. Yeah. I mean, a lot of that color is being lost, and I feel like there's only really a handful of dubstep artists keeping that side of dubstep alive, and they're great and they're doing amazing stuff. I mean, Xylent, Ace Aura is one, AU5. There's so many more, but a lot of the artists that used to put out a lot of melodic stuff, I've completely toned that out of their music, and I just find that so disappointing. I feel like there's so much room for that to still exist, and so I just gradually over the years, my favorite artists started kind of converting to this darker sound. I was just like, oh man. So I was finding it harder and harder to find dubstep tunes I wanted to play out.
Right.
And I actually enjoyed listening to. So I was like, damn, I got to start making my own tunes that I like listening to. And that's kind of where the kind of group mentality.
Yeah, I'm sure the label helps with that. If people are sending you new music.
Exactly, yeah. I want to know about everybody who's doing melodic dubstep right now.
Yeah.
Like, no matter how big, small, I don't care, because I don't like dubstep anymore. I really don't.
Which is weird for a dubstep artist.
Exactly,
to say.
Yeah. There's like a tiny percentage that I really like, and most of it's coming from people with less than 1,000 followers on SoundCloud. So that's why I'm always searching for that, and then that helps them because I'm playing out their tunes and helping them release their music and stuff. So it kind of just naturally came about, really.
How do you find, we talked about this a little earlier, but in terms of, when you come over to the States, how is the reception for what you're doing, both from the listeners and also from the artists? Because I do think what you're doing is so rooted in the UK and those influences.
I guess so,
in
yeah.
some ways. And so I'm curious about, when you start connecting more with American artists as well as the listeners, like, do you have a sense of sort of how your music is perceived by others? And does that affect what you make?
Yeah, so I was actually quite pleasantly surprised, because if you meet an artist that makes really, really aggressive, dark stuff, you don't necessarily expect them to appreciate your floaty fairy music. But yeah, I was surprised because there was that kind of appreciation when I met people. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people need that, man. I mean, I've had artists who make really heavy music on this show, and more often than not, if you talk to them about, what's your favorite part of working on music, they'll say, oh, it's, making the melodies. Like, that's what I love to do. Yeah, for sure. I had, the one that's coming to mind is Eliminate was on this show.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And he was saying, by far his favorite part was like making the melodic sections of his songs.
He's definitely an artist I'd like, yes, please.
Oh, I mean, he's incredible. Keep going with the melodic stuff. He's in a world of his own, but, I think people know him for kind of heavy, weird drops.
You listen to his intros and you're like, oh man, this guy's got some, he's got some skills.
Oh, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, like he's one of my favorite producers right now. And yeah, he can kind of do no wrong in my eyes. But even like I had Sudden Death on the show just a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about, how he really loves getting into the melodic sections of his tunes. Yeah,
I mean, what I really like is when the melodies continue in the drop. Right. And there's a couple of his tunes that absolutely do that with all of the weight you'd expect from a Sudden Death tune. And I think that's the balance. Like I think that is the coolest thing in dubstep, when, It's just a complete mash of the two.
So do you feel like, and I don't mean this as like an aggressive question, but do you feel like in the scene right now, do you feel sort of out of time? Like, you're sort of carrying the torch for something that was the most exciting sound and you believe will be the most exciting sound.
Well, I hope.
Right. Well, of course.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying is because just talking to you and listening to your music and your public persona, all of that, it's very clear that you're invested, that you're passionate about this sound and this style. Do you feel like its moment is coming? Like, how do you bring about the change that you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying my hardest in everything I do in my career to make a change.
Yeah.
What's going on now? There's great stuff, but it's overwhelming. It really is like 90% or more, kind of the heavier side, and melodies are really being pushed to the side.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't believe that, but I'm like, try making a melodic tune and see how it goes down.
Like consciously, other than obviously what you're doing, which is building a community and a movement.
Yeah.
You've got the label, we started talking about your Facebook group, social movement, all that.
Yeah.
Like, how do you bring about the change that you want to see? Or is it more about just doing the work, bringing up the people around you and, hoping that the times kind of catch up or come around?
Yeah, I mean, that is a lot of it. I think, every time I play a set, it is as varied and as musical and interesting as possible and colorful as possible.
Yeah.
I like to play 2019 heavy stuff 1 or 2 times in a set, and I think, that's another flavor added to dubstep. We've had like over 10 years of dubstep now, and we have all these different eras and different flavors that people have brought, and I want to dip into as many of them as possible.
Sure.
It's really that variation.
When I have to imagine you on a festival lineup, you probably are a breath of fresh air, right? Like you,
I hope so.
You in the middle of, say, 4 or 5 other just hard as nails dubstep people.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you stick out in that kind of environment?
Yeah, I quite like it though, because I think people are quite taken aback if I come on after like a really heavy artist or something. And it's been beneficial because a lot of headliner artists like me supporting them.
Sure.
Because
you're not stepping on toes.
Yeah, I can go as hard as I want, but it's never going to be as aggressive and dark as them. So they're always going to come across as, bigger and heavier and stuff. So that's kind of worked in my favor.
How does the crowd react in those kind of situations if you're giving them something maybe a little less expected?
Well, I've tried to kind of tailor my music to what people want to hear in 2019 as well. I'm not, it's what I want to make as well. But I kind of like the challenge of going, okay, let's get people headbanging to something you would not expect them to be able to headbang to. So let's get them headbanging to a wobbly tune. Let's get them headbanging to basically like 7 Lions style tune. And, so that's always been a fun challenge, really.
And so if you just started coming over to the U.S. a couple years ago, were you touring around anywhere before that?
Not really. I played a few shows in Paris.
Okay.
And that was like it.
Yeah.
Because really, most of my fan base was over here. And Europe's kind of a weird market.
Yeah. Is that still true? Like, is the U.S. still the biggest market for you?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. How do you like coming over here, man? How do you like the touring lifestyle as you've gotten more into it?
I love it. It's great. It's obviously exhausting, but I find it kind of easy just to get my head around it. Because really, I'm here. I'm doing a set number of things in an order. My management have put together a thing going, this is where you need to be at this time.
Day, yep.
And that's kind of all I need to worry about, really.
Sure.
So it does clear my head in a strange way.
This is an interesting thing that I just thought of. Do you feel more connected to the music when you're here in that this is where it's really booming? Or do you feel, more isolated if you're back in Leeds as far as the culture of it?
I definitely, before I came out here, I felt very, very isolated back home because there really is nothing. And no one like me and no one that likes dubstep. Like every time I'd meet someone that likes any kind of electronic music, I'm like, oh, we need to talk about this. Like, you know, so coming over here really was a big deal. It was like, oh my goodness, people actually like what I do here. That was very exciting.
Very validating, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I feel most connected with my own fan base, really. Because you can kind of tell if people are there to see you or see another artist that's playing the show. But, you know, it's really, really validating to hear people going like, thank you for keeping this alive. Because so many other producers have abandoned it. And I'm kind of picking up their old
You're right.
audiences, you know?
That's a cool way to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, and that goes back to something I think has been a recurring theme in this conversation, is that idea of building a community, building the scene you want to be a part of, as opposed to trying to fit yourself into somebody else's scene.
Yeah.
Which I think is always the smarter way. And especially for artists who do want to do something a little different, or do want to do something that's maybe not the hot sound of the moment, the hot trend of the moment, you have to build it yourself, as opposed to just getting frustrated about why people won't listen to you, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I want. I want producers who want to start making melodic dubstep today. I want them to be able to look and see that other people are being successful with that. And that alone is going to cultivate that side of dubstep, because loads of people are seeing what like rhythm and the really loud stuff is. They're seeing that that's very popular, and it's very accessible for producers to get into that now.
Yeah.
But I want to be a kind of the guiding torch of the melodic side. I'm gonna be like, look, I can tour. I'm making a living doing this. Like you guys can do it too. If we come together, we can keep this alive and keep it going, and everyone can have a great time.
Does that, yeah. And I mean, does taking on that kind of responsibility, does that sort of energize you? Does that, you know, give you sort of a reason and help you make your decisions? Or conversely, does having that kind of thing on your back give you anxiety? Does it stress you out?
No, not really. I kind of realized that, you know, I can kind of do something about this. You know, I'm not like huge,
right?
But with the kind of following I have, people are looking to me to tell them what other artists are making this kind of music, and that way I can show them, oh, I've got a label with all these other people on, and you know, I've just collabed with this guy. Check out his stuff; it's really interesting. So. Yeah, in everything I'm doing, it has kind of a greater purpose of, you know, holding the torch, keeping this side of things alive, and that's very motivating.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, man, and it's cool to see you doing it, because I think there's very few people who, even if they are in that position, who really step forward and claim it and say, no, this is, you know, actually what I'm doing. I want you to look at me as, you know, somebody who's really pushing this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that, man. So what are this is an open-ended question.
Okay.
What are some of your goals right now?
I mean, I think that is the main thing is keeping this side of dubstep alive. And,
well, drill down into that. What does that look like?
I want to be able to look back in a couple of years' time and know that I've opened doors for people and I've made a difference in the scene. Because there's only so aggressive you can go, and I feel like we've hit that ceiling. And I think I hope fans are going to want something else soon.
Yeah,
and I hope that producers will respond to that by, you know, trying out these older styles or something brand new that isn't just pure aggression.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's room for both too. You know, I don't think it has to be one or the other.
Well, exactly. That's kind of my point. There's room for both, but the aggression is taking up most of the pie. Right? Yeah. So that's all I want really is I want to start enjoying dubstep again. And if I can make that happen by cultivating these smaller artists, or, everything I do in my career, if I can make that change, I'd be very excited to know that I've done something that big, you know.
Do you see your own music evolving in a similar way? Because we've talked about, I think your music does a great job of sort of bridging the gap, finding the balance between the melodic and the heavy. But obviously, as an artist yourself, we're all evolving creatively and artistically all the time. Yeah. Do you have a sense of sort of where your own music is heading in that sense?
Yeah, well, I don't really plan.
Yeah.
I don't really plan.
It's a weird thing to talk about, I know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely inspired by what Azor is doing right now, because the way he's managing to inject tonality into what is really popular right now, that kind of rhythm sound, is very interesting. And I think people will respond very well to that kind of thing. I mean, I've been playing some of his unreleased tracks out, and people are like, what in the hell? I didn't know this could work like this. And that's what's really exciting is, and that's the only thing I see pushing forward that's brand new.
Well, I like that, though, because I think that's how all the best movements happen. That's how all the best creative evolutions come about, is a group of friends, a group of peers, being inspired by each other and, you know, just sort of working in a little collective. And then all of a sudden, as time goes on, those successful movements become part of like a bigger zeitgeist, you know what I mean? One thing I was thinking about, we talked about how you were sometimes feeling isolated when you're out in Leeds and there wasn't much else you could relate to, you know, physically nearby. Do you think that's part of why your sound evolved the way it did?
Possibly, yeah. I mean,
because you were, again, we mentioned like dubstep did sound different in a different era. But I'm curious about the way your sound evolved. I wonder if it's because you were sort of kept separate physically for a while.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I didn't really go to many shows. I think I went to like a couple in London. But it's interesting comparing my kind of journey to where I've gotten to kind of local DJs in America, because they start DJing before they start producing in a lot of cases, and they're like bang on trend, and they want to get into, you know, what they're actually playing and what crowds like over here. So it does make a big difference. Yeah,
that's a good point. I didn't even think about that if you start getting into electronic music as a fan and you go to a big US festival or something, that's going to give you a certain impression of what your music should sound like if you start making music, right?
Exactly, yeah. And originally, really, I was only listening to stuff online and the artists that I liked. So it's possible that kind of became my not going along with trends kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a little more like URL than IRL, right?
I've not heard that before. Is that a phrase?
No, I'm trying to make it one, but no.
It's pretty cool, actually. That's like an album name or something.
It's the name of my next blog post for sure.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we haven't mentioned? Anything you're working on right now that you're excited about? Anything people should know about?
So I guess what I'm most excited about right now is next year. And I got to be careful because I don't want to like spoil all the surprise.
Yeah, it's all good.
But basically, me and two other artists in a very similar field are kind of being put together as almost a supergroup sort of thing. Yeah, as a trio. And it's looking like very big things are going to happen with all three of us. I'm so excited because it means everything I've been working towards with everything melodic is kind of pushed to the forefront. So yeah, I'm very, very excited for 2020. I think that's all I can say there.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. That's dope. I like the idea that if you guys are sort of coming together as a super group, you know, we talked earlier about how artists like Prodigy and Pendulum were influences to you.
Yeah.
And, you know, those are all group projects, right?
Yeah,
and there's a certain power in sort of combining skill sets and people who already have certain abilities, right?
Yeah, that's the cool thing is that with all three of us, it's going to become more people looking to book either of us, any of us individually,
right,
are going to be more excited to book us all together.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've got ideas for tours and releases and all that.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff.
Awesome, man. I'll wrap it up by asking the same question I ask at the end of each episode.
Oh, I know what it's.
You know what?
I've listened to the show. Yeah.
That's fine. Have you thought about your answer already?
Yeah, I was stressing about it actually.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Go on, that's the question. I'll figure out what I'm going to say.
Yeah. Well, the question is basically just a moment in your life, kind of the first thing that pops in your head, although if you've already thought about it, that's already ruined. Just a moment in life when music was really important to you, really meant something to you.
So I think this is... so I've kind of picked a moment.
Let's go.
But it's because I'm hanging out with him right now. So I'm at an Airbnb with Sam Temanite right now, and he also lives in Leeds right now, and he's making very similar music to me, and we've collaborated a bunch. But I was invited down to Bristol to meet the Disciple guys because they all had like a place down there,
right?
While they were like touring around. And I decided to take Sam down, and we were listening in the car to Tennyson. Which are like an amazing kind of like jazz, almost jazz electronic, very difficult to describe kind of band. It's a brother and a sister. And we were listening to one of their tracks, and I'm blanking on the name of the track. I'm going to actually look on my phone because I want people to actually listen to this.
Yeah.
We were listening to Like What? I think it's that one.
Okay.
And it's such an amazing track because it just breaks the fourth wall so many times. There's doors opening into like other rooms where you can hear the music change timbre completely.
Oh, interesting.
And I just remember we were driving down to Bristol, and me and Sam were listening to that, and I was getting chills at his excitement over the music. It was just, that was just a great moment for me.
That's really cool.
In music that came to mind.
Yeah. I love those kind of shared experiences. For me, it all comes down to sharing music with people. That's what initially as a kid I was doing without realizing it. Like I always just wanted to tell other people about music I thought was so cool.
Well, that's the great thing about shows, is because you can show your own side of that, and you can also go, oh, you know what I want to play? I want to play this old 501 track that no one's heard for like 4 years.
Yeah.
and people are like, oh yeah, I remember this tune. And that shared moment is lovely.
Yeah,
I love that about shows.
That connection, man, that's pretty much what it comes down to at the end of the day for me. That's really all I want. That's what makes me the happiest, whether it's at a live show, whether it's just sitting next to a friend, whatever it is.
I'd say I'm the same.
It's the best thing in the world, man. And it's cool too. You mentioned Disciple, who you've worked with, and that was something else I was going to bring up before we get out of here. Is I think that's something cool that you bring to the larger scene, right? Is for you to put out a release on a label like Disciple, that broadens their scope, right?
Yeah. Well, it's unexpected. Like every label I've released with, I'm always trying to push them to take more weird, what they usually wouldn't make kind of stuff. I mean, I had a release back in the day with Firepower Records, and it was called From Fairies to Fire, because it was me trying to fit this kind of fairy-like magical sound with the heavier side of things. And that's kind of where the heavy and melodic crossover began. And I was like, there's no way they're going to take this. It starts with a music box, and it sounds like a lullaby. Right. There is no way they're going to take this. And then they did. And that's what's so cool. I'm really trying to push that every time I release with a label. I'm like, let's see what I can get past them. You know?
Which is great. I think, earlier we were talking about how do you grow this movement? How do you build what you want to see? That's another way, right? Is by linking up with the larger entities, and you open a small door that then other people can go through. I think that's cool, man. I just wanted to shout that out. Shout out Disciple. I like those guys.
Hell yeah.
You think you ever leave Leeds?
Leave Leeds? Well, I kind of already have.
Oh, really?
I'm living in Sheffield. It's like an hour away.
Yeah. What about leaving the UK?
So it's tricky because my fiance back home does law.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's completely non-transferable to anywhere else. She'd have to do like an entire other
She'd have to
degree,
go back to
basically.
school. Yeah. That's
so that's kind of good and bad.
Yeah.
It's bad because we can't move, but at the same time, I don't necessarily want to move.
Right. No, man,
And-
sometimes having like your home base is a good thing. Like I've never lived in LA, even though I've been working in LA for, over a decade. Like I've bounced around. I live in Washington, D.C. now, which is certainly not thought of as a hub of electronic music. But similarly, man, it's nice to have your own space where you can just go, you know the parameters, you get stuff done while you're there, and then you go engage with the larger scene.
Yeah, it definitely feels like I'm in a different world when I'm over here.
Yeah.
It's like a different life I'm living. It's interesting, but it's good because it I don't have to live here to come over and play shows and meet friends and stuff.
Absolutely. And as your career keeps growing and as the touring gets bigger and bigger, it matters less and less where you live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I'm sticking good old North England for now.
You and Jon Snow.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, this has been awesome. Thanks for sitting down with me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Peace. All right, that's the show. Shout out to Chime. Great to have you on the podcast, man. That was super fun. I'm glad we overlapped in LA so we could do that. For everybody out there listening, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I hope you're having a great week, taking care of yourself. And don't forget, Chime is going to be back in the United States in 2020. As you just heard him talk about, there's some big tour plans in the works. His label, Rushdown Records, doing big things. So check out the link in the description of this episode where you can go follow Chime, keep up with him and everything he's doing. You can also follow me, keep up with me, at Willie Joy or at Back to Back Pod on all social media, or you can always email me directly. backtobackpod@gmail.com is the email address. That's it for this week. I just got home, just hopped off the plane. Now I got to go hop in the car, but I love you. I hope you have a great week. Take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, and I will talk to you next week. For Back to Back, this is Willie Joy. Peace.